Good morning, y'all. It is Holy Week, and obviously it's looking a little bit different this year. So much going on in the world. The nice thing is, I feel like I've got time to really contemplate. I was joking with somebody the other day that it feels like God decided He was going to choose what we gave up for Lent to make us really slow down and take time to listen and to contemplate what really matters in our lives. So as I've been doing that, I think the two things that have been very clear to me, one is it's just exposed some fear, some worry, stuff that's going on in my own heart that, like when you have a computer or your phone does this, I guess too, you have apps that are running in the background and they're refreshing. They're still working, but you're not actively paying attention to them. I feel like some of that had been going on in my heart and in my mind, and now it's kind of like I've got time to open up and look at what all had been running in the background that I need to deal with. And so as I've thought about that, what came to mind was Psalm 13, and I shared this with you guys a couple weeks ago in a sermon. It's a Psalm of David, and I love this psalm because it's indicative of a lot of what David shares in the Psalms. They are brutally honest. And I believe honesty is an act of worship when we submit those honest thoughts to the Lord. And we confess them to one another. It brings us into a sense of connection with others. It brings us into the real need for community. Community is not there in a church just to have programs and activities. Community is there for us to share our hearts and to point one another toward Jesus, to remind each other of the faithfulness of Christ. So I love Psalm 13 because I feel like it does both of these things. It's honest, and David is reminding himself what is true. And so this is what it says, Psalm 13. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I bear pain in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all day long? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? Consider me and answer me, O Lord my God. Give light to my eyes, or I will sleep the sleep of death, and my enemy will say, I have prevailed. My foes will rejoice because I am shaken. And this is David. This is the guy through whom the Messiah, through his lineage, is where the Messiah comes. God obviously could have chosen for Christ to have been born into any lineage, into any tribe. And David is honored in that Christ is born into his lineage. Now here's what's even more powerful to me. David is called a man after God's own heart. Here is this man after God's own heart who is brutally honest about the fact that he feels abandoned, that he's wondering where God is. He's being honest. This is one of those apps that's running in the background. This is one of those things that continues to circle around, and a lot of times we don't take the time to deal with it. David is naming it, and he's being honest about exactly what's going on in his heart. But here's what's cool. He doesn't stop there, all right? Now listen to what he says next. He says, but I trusted in your steadfast love. Notice he's talking past tense. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. So let me say it again. I've trusted in your steadfast love. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing because he has dealt bountifully with me. Now what he's doing is he's reminding himself of who God is and what God has done. And so his singing is not based on current circumstance. It's based on two things. The past of what God has already done. And I want you to take time to remind yourself of how many times you thought, I will never get out of this. I'm not going to live through this. I don't know what I'm going to do. And you were in the midst of panic, and God showed up in a powerful way. That's what David's doing. He's reminding himself of how many times God had when he thought everything was over and his enemies would defeat him, he's being reminded of what God has done in the past. He's reminding himself. But there's a second thing he's doing. He's now singing in the present. He's saying, I'm going to rejoice in the present as an act of faith, believing that what he did in the past, he will do in the present, and I will have a future. And so what I would love for you to do, take the time to read Psalm 13. It's short, it's beautiful. The Psalms are amazing, they're honest. But two things that I'd like for you to do today. I want to challenge you, first of all, to pay attention to the apps running in the background. What is it that's going on in my heart and mind? Whether it's about finances or it's about relationships in my life or it's about doubt or struggle, whatever it is, I want you to take some time. You may want to write, you may want to just take some time to meditate and pray. But either way, after you do that, I want you to talk to one person, at least one person, and share with them the brutal honesty of what's going on in your heart, just like David did. Now think about this. David was so honest that this becomes a psalm. It gets put in the hands of a worship leader, a choir director, who sings this for corporate worship. Imagine that. Now, I'm not asking you to do that to make a song out of it, but I am asking you, talk to one or two people that you can trust and tell them exactly what's going on in your heart. Hold nothing back. People that you know care about you. Call them today. Text them today. Tell them exactly what's going on in your heart. But there's a second thing I want you to do. I want you to be reminded of what God has done. Maybe write them down. I would love it if you would be willing to do this, is to shoot a 20, 30-second video, a minute video. Put it on the Facebook page. Put it on your personal Facebook page of a time when you remember thinking that there was no way God would come through, and he did. I'm sure it'd be a huge reminder and encouragement to the people around you who really need to hear it right now. Man, those stories are gold. I mean, that's what we keep coming back to. That's what the prophets keep coming back to. Every time the prophets speak to the people, they're reminding them of all the ways in which God came through, all the things that he did. One of my favorites is Moses. When I think of Moses, here's a man in the middle of a genocide as Pharaoh wants to kill off all the Hebrew boys. A couple of women are faithful in protecting them, knowing that their lives could be on the line. They protect Moses. Moses finally ends up in a basket in the Nile. I mean, how much more hopeless can it get than that? And who picks him up? Of all the people that could have picked him up, the only person that could have been worse than Pharaoh's daughter would have been Pharaoh himself. Pharaoh's daughter picks him up. What does she do? She gives him back, essentially gives him back to his own mother, and pays for the expenses of his education and his upbringing. He then ends up being the deliverer who at one point is running from Pharaoh and then is called by God to go back to Pharaoh, feels inadequate, says, there's no way I can do this. God says, I'm going to do this. Imagine for a moment the story that Moses has to tell. You have a story too. What is your story? What has God done? Share it. I'd love for you to share it in a 30-second, 1-minute video on our Facebook page, but man, share it on your own page as well. I think it'd be a huge encouragement to people. I'm going to share this on Facebook. If you want to share it with others that it might be an encouragement to, that'd be great. But I just wanted to share this with you because I feel like for me, this is how I get by. These are the things that I remind myself of, just like the prophets reminded the people. I feel like God reminds me, hey, Aaron, be honest about what's really going on in your heart and mind, and then be reminded of all the things I've done. So I would love it if you do that. Take some time to meditate. Share with somebody that you know loves you and that you can be honest with what's really going on in your heart, and then take some time to remember what God has done in the past, that you could sing, that you could praise in the present. I love y'all, and I look forward to Good Friday.